The drama series opens with a character named Terenzio who travels to the airport at that moment. He goes to the front desk to inquire about the departure time for the West flight. It will leave after 2 hours, he is told, and later, he buys a ticket to allow him to exit the terminal. A woman was having a video call with a friend who lived in New York in a later scenario. The woman at the airport becomes quite concerned because she is unable to help her best friend at the moment when she faints. A news reporter later passed out while some viewers were watching television. They also discover that other people are laying on the ground after passing out, with no one knowing what caused it. Because people can't pass out in this way, those who were watching the news thought it was a prank. Terenzio is aware that the situation is serious and not a joke. He runs to the terminal and, taking advantage of the guard's distraction, takes his revolver. He requests that no one obstruct his way. He immediately moves in the direction of the Moscow-bound aircraft. The flight was scheduled to take off after some time. At gunpoint, he demands the passenger fly the jet. The co-pilot doesn't want to help this terrorist and the real pilot hasn't arrived yet, and as a result, they were arguing with one another. The pilot is wounded after being hit by a bullet. Due to this circumstance, every passenger was quite anxious. Terenzio later leaves the cockpit and asks if there is another pilot on board. A former pilot woman gets up when she hears this. They are forced to continue flying because the bullet damaged the avionics, making it impossible for anyone to evacuate the aircraft. Later, they interrogate Sylvie about the reason behind his forced deplaning. He discloses that NATO appointed him as an officer. I also know a lot of stuff that others do not. He asserts that the sun's rays have turned deadly when the pilots demand to know the real cause. The sun's rays will kill everyone the following day at sunrise. Even those who will stay at home. He asserts that it is already happening in Japan and Korea. The sun's next target will be this aircraft. The pilots say you are probably mad if the rays will affect it, and they don't believe this. After hearing this, Terenzio says, I might come across as crazy to you, but in reality, I'm not angry. Later, the pilot Matthew's shot wounded hand was bleeding. A female passenger who worked in medicine takes this responsibility and says she will help the pilot. The pilot was uneasy as a result of her removal of the bullet from his palm with a hot knife, and the other passengers also began to worry. The lives of the passengers depend on Mathieu, thus he is aware that he must take this action. Later, Mathieu informs everyone that we will land where Terenzio requests. Mathieu was confident that the fighter jets would undoubtedly arrive to save them despite where we plan to land. The other passenger, however, finds out that sunshine kills people. He begins to question the pilots and thinks they are all lying to him because he doesn't believe this. Later, another passenger enters the vehicle. This one was Arabian, coughed, and eventually passed out. Ayaz pretends to be helping him, but he takes Terenzio's gun. The other pilots were then asked to tell the truth while Terenzio was afterward imprisoned in the restroom. We are about to touch down to the west. They are told that it will land in Iceland by him. When the police show up, they will arrest Terenzio and release the others because Terenzio wants our jet to land towards the west. He talks about the sun's rays, and Terenzio thinks that the sun's rays are responsible for human deaths. The other passengers begin to worry about their families as they each recall having experienced unusual things in the past. Don't worry, I'll handle your responsibility as a captain, the pilot Mathieu later assures the passenger. This aircraft later extends into the west. The pilot observed that there were many other aircraft already present as they prepared to land in Iceland. There have been numerous aviation crashes as a result of an excess of airplanes. There is no place to land, and people are moving. The pilot then begins to think Terenzio was correct. They choose to fly to Scotland because they have nowhere to land. Terenzio was instructed to explain to everyone the reasons why people die from the sun. Terenzio asserts that I was informed of this by my senior and that I am also unaware of its cause. When will this whole thing end? If we have to escape, I just know to land away from the sun. The region that is unaffected by sunlight. The Arabian person who had previously fainted was later found to be hardly breathing. Before dying, he would reveal to everyone that I had ingested the jewels. The nurse tries several times to remove the diamonds from his body, but she is unsuccessful in doing so. Later, they land in Scotland in an emergency, and it was a challenging landing, and there was a real danger of hitting a wall. But eventually, they managed to ground the aircraft. They begin receiving several messages and updates from their family members as soon as their plane touches down. Online news sources were reporting that half of the population had died. Half of them are still alive as a result of the sun's rays. There were no passengers at this airport since they had left. They were seeking a place that was dark so they could hide. According to the news, if the sun rises and someone hides in a bunker, they will perish. These passengers must all fly in the direction of the west. One of the men desires to rejoin his wife. He was debating with everyone about why he didn't want to head west. He was also permitted to come back. Their next stop was Canada, where they would refuel their planes. After some time, the internet signals were rectified, and the radio will soon be fixed. They also receive countless notes that provide the final messages from their loved ones, since their cherished ones departed away afterward. Later, a guy tells them that the reason people are dying from the sun's rays is because of the planet. He is aware of the clarity of the sun. He asserts that the sun's magnetic field reverses once every 11 years. However, the sun's reversed intensity has been seen to be weaker this time. He asserts that every region that the sun's rays can reach has been impacted by the gamma explosion. People die as a result of these gamma rays. They lack the means to support this theory as well. Later, Ayaz discovers through a report that every RAF employee aboard the plane is a terrorist. They were detained and they are from Afghanistan. They were going back to their county of origin. A terrorist and an elderly man are seen battling outside. He then drags the elderly man to the ground and kills him. When the pilot becomes aware of this, he or she decides to fly the terrorists to Canada and continue their journey from there. When they do land, the sunrise will just be 2 hours away. The terrorists were told to locate a neighboring radio repair shop. They request to bring along 2 people. They agreed and said they would take Gabriel and Jacob with them. Gabriel was oblivious of this plane. Jacob locks Gabriel and them in the room when they were traveling with terrorists. He also wants to take Gabriel with him. He rushes swiftly in the direction of the plane. While Gabriel had fled this city, the terrorists were hunting him. Without her and with terrorists pursuing Jacob, the jet lifts off. If the aircraft maintains its level altitude, the window won't break. A seriously unwell youngster was traveling on the aircraft. To aid him, Ayaz tries to get in touch with him. However, his mother advises him to avoid speaking to or approaching his child. They then start receiving radio signals from someplace in Hawaii. They find out about several travelers who are stashed away in an underwater bunker in Hawaii. The pilot wants to go save them because they are still alive. According to the other pilot, we're not even sure if this is the correct information or not. Therefore, going there to save them would be mad. When Terenzio arrives, he asserts that the captain makes all decisions, which is why we don't. In between, it was also decided that each passenger would vote and make a decision jointly. In the meantime, alarms begin to sound. That suggests a problem with the aircraft. They inspect the aircraft. Mathieu finds out that the terrorists they left behind were after them and that one of them had a landing zone attached to him. Mathieu decides to take off and fly the aircraft quickly. And this will result in less oxygen being produced. And as a result of the quick speed, he will fall. He overlooked the fact that their plane's glass was broken in this particular case. The plane is traveling quickly when the window smashes and rapidly receiving air. Things were moving quickly, making it difficult for the people to remain seated. The aircraft is slowed down by Mathieu, who also lowers its altitude. Breathing was difficult for the sick child given that he suffers from a breath condition. Ayaz came up with the idea to give the child an oxygen tube in this situation. Because she had already requested that Ayaz keep her child away, the mother of the child feels ashamed when she witnesses this. We won't be able to land in Hawaii if we continue to travel at this speed. As a result, they changed their landing place. They also had to cope with problems brought on by the terrorists who were hanged, but in the interim, Terenzio, Jacob, and Ayaz board the carriage. To see the terrorist, they drill a hole in the plane's floor. When Terenzio pulls his gun, the criminal takes it. Ayaz saved Terenzio when he was about to be executed. After killing the terrorists, Ayaz briefly rose to fame. Later, it was discovered that the Arabian passenger who had ingested the diamonds had died as a result of Ayaz, since these passengers had interred his body in Canada. While doing this, a boy who was a passenger on this plane notices them. He observed Ayaz pulling something out after cutting his body. Ayaz says that I am smuggling diamonds here. The stones I had hidden there were in the body of the Arabian traveler. Due to the Arabian passenger's improper adherence to the guidelines, this caused him to pass away, which is what motivated me to take the diamonds out of his body. After hearing this, everyone became furious with Ayaz, and a few of them suggested throwing him out like a terrorist. However, Ayaz was backed by the bulk of the passengers. He was handcuffed since few of them wished that he stay. Later on, they land and refuel their planes. The climatologist shares an interesting fact with them. He asserted that the reason the Canadian fruits they consumed are flavorless is that gamma rays, which are so potent, have destroyed the fruit's inherent flavor. If it continues, gamma rays will destroy the structure of the meal. As a result, they can succumb to starvation within a few weeks. We have to drive to a place where the sun can't shine, Mathieu asks the climatologist. This is why we'll think about it later. The pilot, who was advising Mathieu that he had to rest right away because he is fatigued, is later seen. He had been piloting the jet for a very long time and was exhausted. It was clear that the lives of the other passengers were in danger. Every passenger approaches him and persuades him to nod off. I shall sleep, he assures me, but not immediately now. The plane must now be carried by me. They pick up another radio signal in the interim. There was just one talk that could be heard, and it was about Star A-17. They couldn't hear the dialogue very clearly. They rapidly discern that the person speaking to them is an astronaut who is already in space. They were quite shocked to discover that he is still alive and that he is seemingly in contact with the control center on Earth. They decide to go to the NATO headquarters, which is where it all began. They see that Mathieu has passed out. In actuality, the bullet wound in his hand has gotten worse. As a result, the poison is already dispersing throughout his body. If we manage to get to the hospital, the nurse among these travelers says, he and the other pilot, Sylvie, will be controlled by me. When she considered how she would fly the plane without Mathieu, she became rather anxious. Sylvie can be seen watching a YouTube video to learn how to land the plane as the other passengers yell at her to fly despite though she has no prior flying experience. You still need to get off this plane because you are our only hope. Although watching the video was simple, taking off and landing the plane proved to be fairly challenging. Fortunately, everyone on board was safe, and Sylvie was praised by all. They split them up into 3 groups without delay. They must complete various duties. Some must refuel the aircraft, while others are responsible for getting Mathieu to the hospital. Many of the hospital's patients are curled up on the ground and have passed away. When the nurse saw them, she advised the patient not to worry and to instead focus on preserving Mathieu's life. We witnessed the ailing mother of the child organizing various supplies for her child, including his necessities and medications. On the opposite side, we can see the NATO headquarters. Terenzio brings everything to the control room. They lack the time to carefully review each file. For that reason, they decide to check surveillance footage. Later, Terenzio and Ayaz fight after a member chooses a side. Accidentally, Terenzio strikes Ayaz and as a result, Ayaz loses consciousness and starts to bleed heavily. However, one of their numbers was successful in locating a recording. In this recording, multiple cops can be heard speaking. These were about a damned subterranean bunker. The address they had heard on the radio is Sitara number 17. Terenzio approaches Rick and informs him while we continue to observe. In this manner, I killed Ayaz. Rick finds his body covered in blood when he gets there. Mathieu, on the other hand, is currently in a stable situation. Later, a plane was used to transport Mathieu. The other participants get on the plane to fly back. After the surgery, Mathieu feels much better. Terenzio tells everyone not to wait for Ayaz to come back because he won't. They see Ayaz in front of them when Mathieu starts the engine. Terenzio's hands were restrained, whereas Ayaz was carried on board the aircraft. Sylvie warns everyone that we won't have enough fuel to go if the Bulgarian jet doesn't take off in time for us to enter the bunker inside the dam. After landing, they will only have 20 minutes to travel to the bunker. Ayaz's health was getting worse as a result of excessive bleeding. Everyone later queries whether Terenzio worked with you on this. Which penalty do you want to impose on him later? According to Ayaz, I don't want him to die. He should come with us to the bunker since it was so far away. As the jet touches down, everyone boards the cars and drives for the bunker. All of these passengers have been divided into 2 groups. They were moving in 2 automobiles. The first car was driven by Sylvie, and the second was driven by Ayaz. Due to the bleeding, Ayaz's situation was highly precarious, which led to car accidents involving him and his pals. Sylvie had departed in the first vehicle, which had departed from a distance. Sylvie makes a U-turn and enters a gate that is just partially open. Because current passes through the gate, they come to understand that they must keep pressing the button until every passenger has boarded. Since the gate won't close until the button is pressed, pressing it is essential. Terenzio says I'll keep pressing this button until each passenger steps inside. Sylvie chained Terenzio's hands because she thinks he might deceive them as he did with Ayaz. She assures him that he will be released once all of the passengers have boarded. The individuals in the group who were riding in Ayaz's automobile. Terenzio's hands are tied before Sylvie and the other team members enter. After dropping off all of his passengers, Ayaz takes a turn and then another on the opposite side. He uses a different gate to enter the bunker beneath the dam. Terenzio was left there alone since they exited through a different gate. When every other team member had already gone into the bunker, the military finally accepted everyone. They let them know that everybody is now safe. Terenzio stays outside by himself and begs God to forgive him for his sins. The sun's beams killed Terenzio, but all the other passengers survived. Thanks for watching and click on the next movie recap displayed on screen.